Midsommar is unlike any horror movie I've ever seen. Where almost every horror film takes place at night, most of Midsommar is set during the day, in the cozy environment of a brightly lit Swedish village.
It's 9 p.m.
That can't be right, the sky's blue.
Instead of jump scares and uncomfortable close-ups, director Ari Aster films many of the scenes in wide shots, sometimes letting an entire scene play out in just 1 or 2 takes. It doesn't even feature that many deaths on screen, which is usually the meat and potatoes of most horror flicks. But as off-putting as I found the original version of Midsommar, there's another version of the movie that's even stranger.
What's happening? No, wait, stop! Nay!
For one thing, this alternate version shows us more of the unusual rituals of the Harga, the Swedish community who reveal themselves to actually be a pagan cult preying on the visiting foreigners. But Midsommar is not so much about the cult as it is the relationship between Dani and her scumbag boyfriend Christian. And in this alternate version of the movie, we actually get to see a whole nother side to their relationship that wasn't in the cut that made it to theaters. And there's more. One character's death, left unexplained in the original version, actually gets more of an explanation in this new cut. And we also see more of the conflict between Christian and Josh competing to write a college thesis about the Harga. All of this new material and more can only be found in the Midsommar director's cut. But you might be wondering, what exactly does the director's cut add? And could it actually be better than the theatrical version? Let's break down both cuts and see for ourselves. The biggest addition in the director's cut is a pair of scenes that are interestingly both set at night, drawing a stark contrast to all the brightly lit sequences throughout the movie. The first new scene shows us another ritual of the Harga. Shortly after the Testupa scene, Dani, Christian, and their friends are invited to witness another ritual of the Harga, in this case, a water ceremony. Here, the Harga carry a decorated tree into the water, and then seem to put on a short performance before a young boy, dressed just like the tree they tossed into the water, volunteers to be drowned in order to appease their goddess. As the Harga prepare to toss the child into the water, Dani speaks up to stop it. But just as she does, the rest of the Harga protest as well, and the child's death is seemingly averted.
No, wait, stop! Nej! Sluta! Låt honom vara! Han har visat sitt mod! Sluta!
First off, this scene answers what happened to the British girl Connie, whose death is only hinted at in the theatrical cut when we see her waterlogged corpse being taken into the house where Christian and the others are burned. The director's cut confirms that the Harga did indeed drown her, just as they threatened to do with the child. That being said, it is a bit strange that she's there though, so soon after she was disgusted by the Testupa ritual. I'm guessing this was to provide the viewer another visual clue to her death. But in terms of the water ritual we saw, there are a couple of ways this scene could be interpreted. What's interesting is how it shows Dani being more proactive and actually speaking up against the cult, compared to earlier during the Testupa. And we even get some early signs that Dani is starting to be assimilated into the cult. In this shot, she's already a part of their group, while Christian and the others stand outside the gathering. And the cult members immediately begin to mimic Dani after she calls to stop the drowning of the boy, just as they do later in the film. But is this a typical Harga ritual? Or did they put on the show in order to test Dani? The scene leaves it open-ended. But what's even more intriguing is how the movie builds on this scene to expand the central relationship between Dani and Christian, which is one of the big changes in the director's cut.
Can you not see what's going on here? This level of tradition? No one's seen this, no one's written anything on it, and they've invited us to be a part of it. Can't you see what a privilege that is?
Following the water ritual, Dani and Christian have a discussion about whether to leave the community. Christian reveals to Dani that he's doing his thesis on the Harga now and competing with Josh over it. But Dani says that they can't trust the Harga, since they clearly depend on no one knowing about the pagan rituals they're performing. Again, this shows Dani showing more common sense and independent thinking compared to the rest of her group. And later in the scene, she even stands up to Christian, asking him point blank if he loves her anymore. This upsets Christian, who chastises Dani for using her psychology degree to describe their relationship. But there's an even more revealing moment when he calls back to when Dani picked flowers for him earlier in the movie.
When you casually gift me an impromptu bouquet of flowers, that just makes me think, how and when am I supposed to pay that back? Everything you give me is a reminder that I'm not doing enough for you in this relationship.
What, at lunch? I picked those on a whim.
Oh, don't try to tell me that you had no ulterior motive.
Yeah, what
your
motive
birthday,
do I have?
the day after I didn't get you something?
Are you being serious?
It's a really nice scene that gives us some more details about their relationship. It does raise the question of why Dani would eventually fall victim to the cult if she's the only one smart enough to question them now. But in my opinion, this makes it even more tragic that the cult is able to take advantage of her emotional instability and convince her to join them.
And I feel like their relationship has a whole other chapter to it that we had to remove to get the time down. Them arguing in the field, which was always sort of like a centerpiece for me, was always the marker of like, we're right in the middle now.
This sequence has more ripple effects throughout the rest of the movie as well. For one thing, Dani's dream sequence, where she sees Christian and the others leaving her behind in the village, has more of an impact, coming immediately after the new scene of her fight with Christian. This sequence is supposed to illustrate her fear of abandonment, which resonates even more strongly since we saw Christian do that in reality just moments before. Later on, we get a short scene where Dani and Christian make up with each other, albeit with Christian never really apologizing.
I don't want us to be fighting, Christian.
Well, me neither.
At first, it seems to be a rare moment where we see the couple act decently toward each other. But what's even more interesting is how this interaction adds new meaning to a scene we already saw in the theatrical cut. Here, Christian is talking to a Harga resident doing research for his thesis, when Dani comes up to him and tells him that Simon strangely left Connie by herself. She's then taken aback when Christian barely acknowledges the news and goes right back to his interview.
Is she okay?
No, she just got...
Did she say why?
No.
It sucks. On the subject of couples, actually, is there ever an issue with incest?
The shot finishes with Dani catching a glimpse of Josh conducting his own research with the Harga. And suddenly, Christian's priorities are crystal clear. But when you take in this sequence after the makeup scene, Dani's revelation hits even harder, as she realizes how Christian was just pretending to be apologetic moments before, and both she and the viewer get a better sense of how manipulative he is. It also makes this line,
I could see you possibly doing that.
from a later scene, much more motivated. These are all examples of how Aster's director's cut doesn't just add new scenes, it also adds new context to the existing scenes in the theatrical cut. And if you think Christian is even more of a scumbag in the director's cut, well, it doesn't stop there. Another extended scene in the director's cut is the initial fight between Christian and Dani after she learns that he's going to Sweden. In the theatrical cut, it ends on this line.
It can be inspiring, right? Right?
But in the director's cut, the conversation continues, with Dani starting to panic and rapidly apologizing to Christian for confronting him about going to Sweden. And then Christian reveals that he actually planned on inviting Dani to Sweden anyway. Or at least, he claims as much.
What do you mean?
What I just said?
To Sweden?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want me to go?
I just asked.
Yeah, after I broke down crying.
Well, you ruined the surprise. I wanted it to be romantic.
It really highlights how conniving Christian is, and it sets up his gaslighting of Dani much earlier in the movie. While the director's cut definitely fleshes out a lot of the central relationship between Dani and Christian, it also adds some finer touches to some of the subplots. Most notably, the conflict between Josh and Christian over their thesis gets some more airtime in the director's cut. For example, in the car ride on the way to the Harga village, Josh explains what his thesis is about, and Dani awkwardly gets Christian to admit he doesn't know what his paper is actually about yet.
What are you doing your thesis on again?
Well, my focus is actually on European Midsommar traditions, which is basically the impetus for this whole trip that we're all on.
Hey, that sounds similar to what you think you're doing, right? For your thesis.
Well, I don't know exactly what I'm doing it on yet, as you know, but I'm thinking of rooting it in something Scandinavian, yeah.
But the theatrical cut removes that interaction and tosses in a random line from Mark mentioning Christian's thesis, which was clearly added in post-production to make up for cutting the longer scene.
The Vikings grabbed all the best babes from other countries and dragged them over.
Christian, you can do your thesis on that.
And later, the confrontation between Josh and Christian gets a bit longer of an outburst from Josh, who calls out Christian for not approaching his studies the same way as Josh does.
In case you hadn't noticed, Your Highness, we're doing the exact same degree.
No, but not in the same way, Christian. Okay? I have to hold your little hand through everything. You didn't even know how to use JSTOR until I taught you, and you are a grad student. Why are you even in academia? You don't care.
These moments are nothing earth-shattering, but they do help to beef up the subplot and lead to some more moments of humor. Like this scene where Christian tries to do some research but forgot to actually bring paper to write on. Oh, by the way, this scene is new too, and it also helps to beef up another storyline, Maja's seduction of Christian. Maja is never actually introduced to Christian in the theatrical cut, so while not totally necessary, this scene does establish that they have officially met. And it pays off later, when the elder Harga leader brings up Maja to Christian, who now has a reason to know who Maja is. Speaking of this scene, the director's cut makes some interesting changes here too. The elder reveals that Pele gave Maja a photo of Christian before he arrived, setting up her infatuation with him. And although Christian seems more hesitant when she asks him if he wants to mate with Maja, she tempts him by saying it would be a unique academic opportunity.
From an academic perspective, it would also provide a unique glimpse into our sexual rights.
This conversation also gives us some more insight on how much the cult has been scheming against the foreigners since before they even arrived. But I also think it ends on a much stronger note. In the theatrical cut, Christian and the elder's conversation does feel cut short, and it ends on what's supposed to be a joke, with a close-up of Christian and a line delivered off-screen from the elder.
I think I ate one of her pubic hairs.
Sounds probably right.
But the director's cut not only has a new punchline that's funnier, it holds the wide shot for longer. So when it cuts to a close-up of Christian, it's more jarring, which makes the impact of the new punchline to the scene even stronger.
From an academic perspective, it would also provide a unique glimpse into our sexual rights.
Can I not have a unique glimpse without participating?
And this is another of the main areas where a longer cut makes sense for Midsommar, and the very deliberate way Aster and his crew shot the movie. Like I said at the beginning of this video, Midsommar isn't like typical horror flicks, which often employ shorter, more breakneck pacing accompanied by quick editing. Many of Midsommar's scenes play out in long single takes, with both the background and foreground heavily choreographed. It not only gives a sense of life to each scene, it makes the whole community of the Harga feel more lived in, more real. The director's cut only builds on this, especially through Aster's use of the background. When Christian first speaks to Maja, we see them decorating the tree that's later used in the water ritual. In another scene, we even see the maypole being set up. Here, in the theatrical cut, we see Harga villagers collecting the ashes of the elders who committed suicide. But in the director's cut, this fire that the Harga used to burn their bodies is introduced much earlier and given some background, with Pele explaining that the cult keeps it constantly burning 24/7. None of these elements really affects the story or our understanding of it, so you can see why they were the first scenes to be cut. But they serve to enrich the world of the Harga and give Aster more opportunity to play within the frame, so that there are almost two different movies playing out, one in the foreground and one in the background.
I feel closer to this version because it feels a little bit closer to what I originally intended, which was basically to make a film that you kind of have to give yourself to and just like lie in.
So the director's cut is definitely more Midsommar, but is it a better Midsommar? You can see why Aster prefers the longer cut. The central relationship between Christian and Dani gets more room to breathe, culminating in their argument in the field that gives us a glimpse at a dynamic we never really got to see in the theatrical cut. And we get a more detailed picture of the Harga, including more of their rituals and more hints at how they've been setting up these travelers for their doom. Plus, some of the extended scenes simply feel less abrupt compared to their truncated endings in the theatrical cut. But it's hard to argue that all of this extra texture to the movie was really necessary. Yes, we get more setup of Christian trying to steal Josh's thesis, and Connie's open-ended death makes more sense here. But that said, the general arc of the movie doesn't change that much, and all these plot lines are conveyed just fine in the theatrical cut. I personally already thought the original cut of Midsommar was a bit too long as is, and with the director's cut over 20 minutes longer, I don't think there's enough new detail here to justify the added length, save for perhaps the nighttime argument between Christian and Dani. The longer cut certainly satisfies some of my curiosity about the Harga and the world that Aster has created here, but I find myself preferring the more streamlined theatrical cut when all's said and done. That sums up the biggest changes to Midsommar in the director's cut, but it's worth noting that there are even more edits that Aster made to the movie, which I may cover in a future video. If you're interested in investigating these more yourself, check out the video description, where I'll list the places you can find both versions of Midsommar. And be sure to check out my channel for my other videos on alternate versions of movies and how they measure up to their original cuts. Don't forget to let me know which version of Midsommar you prefer in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.